were the days of Elijah.
Welcome to another Science Audio Visual Tutor brought to you by Ronique Bernard. Once again, we'll be looking at human and social biology, but our topic for today is reproductive system. And I know that many of you out there, especially the males, will find this topic very interesting. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Review. Babies must be produced for the human species to survive. Reproduction ensures new individuals are produced. Sexual reproduction involves a male and a female pair which produce different types of sex cells called gametes. The male gamete is called a sperm and plural is spermatosa, and the female gamete is called the ovum and plural ova. These two gametes fuse or join during fertilization, and later down in the lesson we'll be looking more about on fertilization. Fusion of the gametes forms a single cell called the zygote. The zygote then divides into many cells forming the embryo. The embryo develops into the baby. Now, ladies, please don't get too excited about this picture. We're now going to be looking at the male and reproductive system. Now, first of all, let us identify the different structures of the male reproductive system. Now, of course, we will start with the testis, which is this area right here, the testis. And if you see this curved area, the gentlemen know what I'm talking about, and some ladies, it's called the scrotum. Now, the testis is responsible for the production of sperms or spermatosa, right? Now, whenever the testis makes the sperm, it is then stored in another structure called the epidermis. Did you hear me? I'm telling you that the sperm is produced in the testis and it is stored in the what? Epidermis. Now, gentlemen and ladies, this is PG-13. No, not PG-13. PG what? 18, right? Good. However, still, whenever a man is going to ejaculate, the sperm will travel from the epidermis and it will travel along this tube called the vas what? Difference. So the vas difference carries the sperm from the epidermis all the way out of the what? The penis. But before we reach there, you have what we call the seminal vesicle and you have what we call the prostate gland. And there's another gland called the Cooper's gland. Now, the Cooper's gland and the prostate gland, which is right here, and the seminal vesicle, they all secrete seminal fluid, right? They all what? Secrete seminal fluid. Now, if you look at your worksheet where you see the summary, the structure and function of the male reproductive system, the notes is already there, and that's why you don't see me put any notes on the screen here. All right, so you can read and listen and follow. Good. So all these glands, they secrete a fluid called the seminal fluid containing nutrients, good, and enzymes which activate the sperm. So the sperm become active because of the fluid being secreted by these what? Glands. And of course the sperm is a living thing because evidently the nutrients is what the sperm would what? Feed on. So ladies and gentlemen, it's a living thing that leaves a man's penis and enters a woman's vagina. The sperm is living. Now, this prostate gland, if you look closely, it is found where you have the vas deferens joining with the what? 'Cause this tube right here is the vas deferens and it actually joins with the urethra. So where both tube joins, that is where you find the what? Prostate gland. Okay? Now, it makes a fluid which the sperm swim in. So the prostate gland itself, it makes a fluid for which a sperm swims in. So when the sperm is actually passing along this tube, around this region, or approaching this region, then of course the part of the brain that controls the secretion of fluids, the involuntary action, would in fact allow the prostate gland to secrete such fluid that the sperm can to, to, to enhance the movement of the sperm. Good? So here we have now the seminal vesicle and we have the prostate gland. Now this tube right here is called a ureter. Now this tube is connected to your kidney. Good? And it is also connected to your bladder. And this area is where you store what? Urine. But this has no bearing really on um, sexual reproduction. Okay? Now, of course, right here, this is a muscle. Right here, the part that tends to get erected, or some persons say stiff, and some persons say hard. Good. Now, of course, this area is a muscle, and when a man becomes excited, when he sees a nice, sexy woman like certain people, the erectile tissue tend to stand up like a man. So this is where you find the erectile what? Tissue. Now, you might be asking why the penis has to get stiff and hard. Well, good question, but I won't be able to tell you that. But anyway, but the thing about it is that they just try. Gentlemen, you can try this with your women, but man, you lose them. Try to enter a woman's vagina without an erected penis and see what happens. Good? And then maybe get your answer from there. Alright. So basically, that is that. So let us just look it over back again. So once again, the sperm is produced in the testis, it is stored in the epidermis, it is transported out of the penis by the vas deferens, and of course, nutrients and fluids for to enhance movement and energy. It is fluid comes from both the seminal vesicle, the prostate gland, and the Cowper's gland to enhance movement of the sperm. And of course, when a man is ejaculating, of course, the erectile tissue contracts and allows the penis to become erected for shooting out of the sperm. And that's it for the male. All right? Now, gentlemen, I know you have never seen this in live action, but you all have only seen the entry, the entrance. But just in case you're curious to find out what it looks like inside of a woman's, reproductive system, then this is an example of it. All right, gentlemen, don't try anything funny here, please. Now, this is the female reproductive system. Right here is the entrance, or this is basically a front view of the female reproductive organs. Now, this area right here is called the vagina, and the vagina, the average, what should I say, length of the vagina or depth of the vagina is normally 3 inches deep. and for some, maybe a little bit longer. Now, this area right here is a narrow opening between here the uterus and the vagina. So the name of the narrow opening between the uterus and the vagina is the what? Cervix. Now a little later in the lesson we'll hear a little bit more about the cervix. But ladies, please pick your men right, because some men tend to damage the cervix and lead into cervix cancer. And women, please not to have too many children, because the secretion of children, as if you want to put it that way, would also add in leading to cervix cancer. Now, this area right here, and many women don't like this part of the vagina, the uterus wall. Now, you learn later in the lesson that this uterus wall tends to break up once every month. Now, this area right here, and they have what? Two ovaries, left and they have the right one. And then this area right here, you see the finger-like structures, they're called oviduct funnel. Now, this tube right here, running along here, and from over here too, is called the fallopian tube, and sometimes it is called the oviduct as well. If you look in the notes, you'll see the name oviduct. Okay? All right. And of course, the ovaries, they store, not produce, they what? They store eggs, or otherwise called ovum, or more than one egg is called an what? Ova. Now, women, they are born with these eggs, or ova, or ovum rather, in their what? Ovaries. So they are born with it. So they didn't make them nor produce them. They only what? Store them. And they are released once per month. Okay, one at a time, that is. All right? I think that's it for that. Let's move on. Now, we're going to be looking at a concept called ovulation. All right? Let me go back still a bit. Now, this egg, once a month, is released from the ovary from into the fallopian tube, and the action, just the movement of the egg from the ovary to the fallopian tube, is called ovulation. All right. Now, this oval shape is our ovary, and this yellow object is our developing follicle. But I ask you now to pay close attention to what's happening, and if possible, take your pencil or your pen and paper, draw what you see, and describe what you saw. All right, let's go. Now, note, if you can see this dark spot, it is basically the egg inside the what? Follicle. So what we have here, this yellow object is our follicle, but inside the follicle right here, you have an egg, or rather, an ova. Now, if you notice that the size of the follicle increased, and also the size of the ova also what? Increased. And there basically was moving from this side of the ovary towards the what? The side or the surface of the ovary. So I would like for you now to write a sentence or two to describe that movement, that the egg, the follicle that is, it moved from this section of the ovary and moved towards the side, and it continues to what? Grow. Now, this is called now the nearly mature what? Follicle. meaning that it is not yet mature, but it is what? Nearly. It is almost mature. Good? Now what is going to happen next? And of course, this black spot here is called the ovum or the what? Egg. Now, the mature follicle, the mature follicle now is called the Graafian follicle. You heard that? The mature follicle is called a what? Graafian follicle. In other words, the adult follicle is called the Graafian follicle. We're not saying that it's an adult, but it's the mature. This is the ripened follicle. You know, it's like a mango. When it's first see the mango, it is very small. I don't know if you have ever seen that. But if you look on the blossom, you see a very small mango. And every day that you go back to the mango tree, you start seeing the mango getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the mango itself is like a follicle. It grows. And you notice that the seed is inside of it as well. So the seed is like the what? Ovum. So both the follicle and the egg grows. Now whenever the mango reaches, the color changes. In this case, the size of the follicle what? Also what? Changes. Okay. So this Graafian follicle now is like a ripe mango. Good? Alright. Now let's observe what happens after this. Now, if you notice now that right here we have a what? A crack inside of the what now? Inside of the ovary. So what is going to happen now is that the Graafian follicle now is also going to what? Burst, and then this is what is going to happen. Ovulation. So you saw that now the egg was released from the Graafian what? Follicle. So as the release of the egg, that is called ovulation. Let's look at it again. Good. So the release of the ovum or the egg is called ovulation. All right? Okay, this area right here, as soon as the ovum is released, it is formed into what we call a corpus luteum. Now, it breaks down unless pregnancy what? Occurs. In other words, if pregnancy occurs, this area will not what? Break down. It will remain as it is. Alright? So this area is called the corpus what? Luteum or yellow body. So after the egg is released, this is then it appears, and the appearance of this thing is called the corpus luteum or the yellow body. All right. Now take note of this. The follicle stimulating hormone controls the growth of what? Follicles. So when you saw the size of the follicle changing, what controls that growth or the increase in size of the follicle is an hormone called the follicle stimulating what? Hormone. Now the luteinizing hormone, it controls ovulation and it forms the corpus what? Luteum. Luteum. So this region here is controlled by this hormone, the luteinizing hormone, and of course the release of the egg is also controlled by the same hormone, which of course the release of the egg is called what? Ovulation. And that's it. Simple as that. Good. So this activity takes place only once per month. Now, ladies, there are two signs that you can use to know if you are going to ovulate. Now, one of the signs is simple this. Your body temperature will increase. So you tend to feel a little bit hotter than normal. Is that true, ladies? Never experienced that before? Well, maybe you don't recognize it. But that is what happens. So the other sign, ladies, is that there's a small secretion of fluid at the cervix. And I once heard as well that there's a color change in your urine. So sometimes when you go to the toilet or the lavatory, you can, after passing urine, you can look at the urine and see if there's a color change. You can, monitor it. So the three signs really: an increase in temperature, a small amount of secretion of fluid at the cervix, and of course, color change in the urine. So those are the three signs that speak of ovulation. All right. Okay. Now we're going to be looking at the menstrual cycle. Now, as you know, that this area of the female reproductive system is called the oviduct, or sometimes called the fallopian tube. Now, this area now, the finger-like structure, is also called the oviduct what? Funnel. And that is the path of the female reproductive system that receives the released egg. Now, this area right here is called the uterus wall. All right? And of course, you know that these oval shape represents the what? Ovary. Now, you might be wondering, why is it that I have uh, almanac right here, a calendar? Now, what you need to find out is this, and this is very important for young people to know as well, as relates to a contraceptive method and a natural contraceptive method, which is called the rhythmic method. Now, normally, take for example, the menstrual cycle is a 28-day cycle. Now, what happens is this. Let us say that on January 1st, the egg was released. Now, between January 1st and January 8th, a woman can become pregnant. Why? Because the egg remains, she's fertile. In other words, this egg remains in the tube from here to about here for 7 days, so at least a week. So if she ovulates on January 1st, if she experiences any changes in her body on January 1st, then it is not wise to have sexual intercourse without a condom or a diaphragm or any of those contraceptive planning methods, right? So the fertile, so within these 7 days, any of these days, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the eighth, she can become pregnant. Now, after the 7 days has passed, if the egg is not what we call fertilized, then what will happen is that the uterus wall right here will break down, and that is what you call the period. So what happens right there is that for the next 5 days, the woman will experience the passing of blood, or the tissue. The tissue, the uterus wall is basically blood cloth, which is really blood. So basically, what happens is that it will, she will experience that period, cramps, etc., for 5 days. So let us say we count from uh, the 9th of January. So by the 10th, 11th is 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So by the 14th, then she'll be able to have unprotected sex. That is if she doesn't have any venereal disease like AIDS, gonorrhea, syphilis, or if the male doesn't have any disease like AIDS, gonorrhea, syphilis, then she's able to have sex and not being pregnant on day 14. Now, the safe period that you may read up in the textbook is from the would be from the 14th, the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, and the what? 18th. So 5 day, within that 5 day period, it is safe for her to have what? Sex. So therefore, if you realize we have gone 2 weeks already, and we're at now the 18th, which is going to the what? third week. Now, so those 5 days are what we call the safe period, the time after her menstruation. Good. Now, some people may take the risk and have sex the 19th and the 20th, and it's possible that she will not become pregnant. But guess what? If you happen to go anytime after, say, the 20th, then you're going to go return to the ovulation what period, and then it continues. So the cycle will begin once again with ovulation. Now remember that after the egg is being released, the the hormone, the luteinizing hormone, which controls the release of the egg and also controls the preparation of the uterus wall, is active. So you have two safe periods rather. You have 11 days before menstruation begins and 5 days after menstruation. All right, so those are the two safe periods. So my instruction to you at this moment then is to watch the animation, take your pen and paper, and write a sentence or two to describe what you saw. All right, now let's go. Okay, so you saw that ovulation took place a while ago. Now, before going any further, these green lines represent what we call cilia, and the cilia helps to move the egg along the oviduct, or what otherwise called the fallopian tube. All right. Now, what you notice happen now? The uterus wall right here has begin to what? Break up, because the egg itself wasn't what? Fertilized. But there there's a question that you may have to answer that says, why does the uterus wall become thick and spongy before ovulation? And the answer simply is to prepare itself for a fertilized what? Egg. So normally the uterus wall prepares itself for a fertilized egg. And this spongy lining of the uterus, or the line of the uterus becomes thick and spongy, and at the same time, it is filled with a lot of blood vessels to supply the embryo with food and oxygen if there should be an fertilized egg. So at all times, the uterus wall will prepare itself for a fertilized egg. Okay, but in this case, the egg is not fertilized. So the egg will continue to move. Good. So you realize now that the uterus wall basically broke up and was now released from the female reproductive system. And that is what we call menstruation. So if the egg is not fertilized, it is dead by the time it reaches the what? Uterus. So when it reached uterus a while ago, it was in fact dead. Now it does not sink into the spongy wall, but it continues downwards as you saw. Now down through the what? Vagina, etc. So as the spongy lining is not needed now, it gradually disintegrates and as well. So it too is slowly lost through the vagina. Now this is what is called menstruation or a period. As I told before, it normally lasts for 5 days. Now after menstruation, the lining of the uterus builds up again, as you will see. Good. So the lining of the uterus builds up again so that it will be ready to receive the next egg if it is fertilized. And of course, you know that the menstrual cycle is controlled by hormones, and that is on your worksheet. Now we're going to be looking at fertilization. And of course, as I once said again, ladies, please do not get too excited. All right, remember you're in a class. Okay, now I'm going to ask you once again to look at the television screen, take your pen and paper, and write what you observe after seeing the activity on the screen. Now note, okay, good. Now, as you notice that if you didn't see that, I'm going to ask you please to replay the video so that you'll see what happened again. All right. But as you notice that the sperm came from the testis, well, the epidermis, which is stored, and it traveled along the vas deferens, and then it actually traveled along the what? Urethra. Good. That is between the muscles of the penis, and then it shoots out upwards. Now the sperm has a tail and a what? And a head, as you saw that before. And the tail and the head helps the sperm to swim up. So the sperm basically swim up, turned, and then it fuses or joins with the what? The egg. Now the color change from black to blue is what we call fertilization. So fertilization really is the fusion of the nucleus of the sperm and the nucleus of the ova. Good. So when both nucleus fuse together, that is fertilization. But note, only one sperm rather, can join or fuse with an egg. And after this fusion, the egg now, it's basically what they call it, becomes impenetrable, meaning that it cannot be penetrated by any other sperm. And guess what happens? All the other sperm end up what? Dying afterwards. Good? So only one lucky man can get there. And guess what? There's a principle to learn from that to know. It is one man to one woman. One woman to one man. Good. All right. Now, this blue circle now, the fertilized egg, is called a zygote. And that is that for fertilization. Now remember too, if the egg is not fertilized, it will die and it will pass out with the what? The uterus wall after it broke up and then leave the vagina. The next concept we'll be looking at is what? Implantation. So we just looked at fertilization a while ago. Now we're going to look at implantation. Note, this is the area where the the egg rather became fertilized and it became a zygote. Now I want you to observe what is happening on the screen once again. So look carefully. All right. Now, if you observed that we had a couple circles right here together. Now, it's have the same color of the zygote. Now, the zygote it becomes one cell and it begins to divide. And that's why I saw so many different cells. So, and it continues to divide and divide and divide because right here you saw about 3, here you saw about 4, then 5, and then 6. And it multiplies and continue to multiply. So what you saw right there was a process called cell division. Good? And that process is called mitosis. Right? So mitosis was taking place along this area, which is cell division. Now, you saw, well, let us go back to it a little. Good. So there you saw implantation. So implantation is basically the sinking of the fertilized egg in the uterus wall. So you saw that the fertilized egg what sinked in the uterus wall, and that is called implantation. Okay. Now we're going to be looking at pregnancy. So of course that woman in the implantation presentation, you realize that the egg was fertilized and it became a zygote, and of course now the woman is pregnant. So once again, in summary, when the sperm nucleus and the egg nucleus are fused together, they form a zygote. The zygote continues to move slowly down the oviduct, as you saw. As it goes, it divides by what? Mitosis. After several hours, it has formed a ball of cells, as you saw, and this is called an what? Embryo. Now the embryo obtains food from the yolk of the what? Egg. Alright? Now it takes several hours for the embryo to reach the uterus, and by this time it is a ball of 16 or 32 cells, and the uterus has a thin spongy lining, and the embryo sinks into it, and this is called implantation. So where you saw the ball of cells sinking in the uterus wall right there, that is called implantation, and the ball of cells that you saw there keep multiplying is called the embryo. All right. Now, so the cells in the embryo now buried in the soft wall of the what? Uterus. As the embryo grows, a placenta also what? Grows. So here is the placenta. Good? And it says as the embryo grows, the placenta also grows. Now, which connects it to the wall of the what? Uterus. So the placenta, it connects the embryo or the fetus to the wall of the what? Uterus. So the wall of the uterus is somewhere about here. Now, this structure that you see coming from the placenta to the fetus is called the umbilical cord. Now, the function of the umbilical cord is to carry substances to the fetus and away from the what? Fetus. We look at that in a little while. Now, this fluid surrounding the fetus is called the amniotic fluid, and it is stored in the amnion. Now, the function of the amniotic fluid is to protect the fetus or to prevent it from any what? Shock. So if the mother should fall or get a little bounce, the fetus will not be affected. All right? Good. Now, I would like for you now to pay close attention to what is going to happen. But before we do that, let's look at the diagram. Now, this area in red is the mother's what? Blood. Now, this black line surround enclosing the mother's blood is called the wall of the what? Uterus. Now, this blue area here is called the placenta. And as you can see, that the wall of the uterus extends around the what? Placenta. Now, this cylinder-shaped object is representing what we call the umbilical what? Cord. Now, enclosed in the umbilical cord, you have the umbilical artery and you have the umbilical what? Vein. And of course, this yellow rectangle represents the fetus. But before we go any further, let us see identify what these circles represent. Now, this green one will represent waste and carbon what? Dioxide. And the red one up here will represent food and oxygen. All right? Because remember, when the mother eats, the child must also what? Be nourished. Now, what I want mothers to be careful of, any substance that enters the mother, the child will receive it. For instance, smoking. If the mother smokes, the child become affected by the nicotine because that travels in your bloodstream. So anything that travels in the mother's blood stream, the child can receive. So mothers, please, if you want to have a healthy bouncing baby boy or girl, do not smoke, do not drink alcohol, do not eat anything that will affect the development of this child. So now please pay attention. Good. If you notice that the green object, which is the waste and carbon dioxide, it travels from the fetus through the umbilical artery to the mother's blood. And then you realize that the red circle, which is food and oxygen, travels from the mother to the fetus through the umbilical what? Vein. So the umbilical cord, it, it joins the placenta and the what? Fetus. Now I want you to note a few things. The umbilical cord is made up of an artery that carries away waste and carbon dioxide from the fetus, and an umbilical vein which carries food and oxygen from the mother to the fetus. Good. Now, birth. Now, pay close attention to what's happening in this animated picture. Now, there are three stages in birth. Stage one. This is what happens in stage one. Muscles of the uterus wall will what? Contract. Look at the animation picture carefully. And then the amnion will what? Burst. So of course the fluid, that's what they say that the water break. So when the person said that the water break, it simply means that the mother is ready to give what? Birth. And of course the cervix what? Dilate. Now I'd want you now to take your dictionary and to look up the word dilate, and you will know exactly what happened to the what? Cervix. So three things happened in stage one. The muscles of the uterus wall contracts, the amnion bursts, and the cervix what? Dilates. Now in stage two, what happens in stage two? Baby turns over, as you can see. Look, the baby turns over as head passes through the birth canal. So look at this animated picture again. Baby turns over and the head passes through the birth canal. So that is stage two. And the final stage, stage three. Now, in stage three, the afterbirth. Look at it, which is this thing right there. The afterbirth, which is made up of the umbilical cord and the placenta, is also forced out of the mother. So those are the three stages of birth. Okay, we're now at the contraceptive methods. Now we have two type of condoms. This one, as you know, is a male condom. As you can see on the ad, it says what? Pinch, leave an inch, and roll. Now we have also the female condoms. So ladies, if a man doesn't want to pinch, leave an inch, and roll, you can also insert your what? Female condom. And of course, this is one of the best contraceptive methods because it doesn't only prevent unwanted pregnancy, but it also prevents the transfer of sexual transmitted diseases. Good. However, you must note that you should look at the expiry date of the package to make sure the condom is still good. You must, some men think that using more than one condom at the same time is safe, but that too is not safe, right? It's only use one condom, because if you use two condoms or more, the friction that is there will cause the condoms to what? Burst.